talking about tapes.
Hello, Joe Bob. How are you?
I'm good. Great to be here at Hack the Movies.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to Hack the Movies. This is like a little dream come true. Actually, you know what's funny? We're filming this on the anniversary 4 years ago is when you were here last time. And it's
exactly?
Actually, yes,
exactly
I pulled up
to the day.
Because, you know, in the morning I'll put up Facebook and I'll do like the on this day back when, and it's like 4 years ago today. It's a picture of me and you in the kitchen. I'm like, oh wow, that's actually really
well. Even though 4 years have passed, I still don't know where I am. Somewhere in the wilds of Pennsylvania. People just drive me here, and you go through all these different little towns, and you don't know where they are.
Yeah, you were talking about like Pennsylvania has so many townships and boroughs. And
yeah, it's like I don't know where this is, but and it's an underground bunker. You should tell people that. Yeah. We're in an underground bunker.
I don't know what you're talking about. This
like
is
the last days of Hitler.
This is a real video store. I don't know.
And but 4 years ago,
yes.
I came here to be interviewed by James Rolfe.
Yep.
And it was before I ever was. I was about to do my marathon on Shudder.
Yeah.
And James had all these like specific questions about Monster Vision and drive-in theater and the shows I'd done, and I never knew anybody was that into that far into it because I'd done so many thousands of shows that when you're at a big place like TNT, you just feel like you're throwing them. You're in a concrete room. You're just like throwing them out into the ether, and you don't get that much feedback. and James was giving me all this specific stuff about remember when you did that, remember when you did that, remember when you did that, and it was this great interview. And a lot of people had never heard of me or never seen the Monster Vision show.
Yeah,
but they love James. You know, they said, "Oh, I'm going to watch that thing," and so they watched it on when we had the marathon. In July of 2018.
I was one of the many people that's like, oh, that's tonight. Let me sign up. And then the website was like, there's too many people signing up.
Yeah. So this I love this underground bunker because it's where James introduced me to a whole new audience.
Well, now you're going to get my audience. It's significantly smaller, but they're very dedicated. They're very dedicated, very loyal.
Okay.
Yes, and I watched a lot of Monster Vision when I was a kid. I was like young when your show was on, but my grandfather introduced me to like a lot of these horror films, and ironically to Howling, which is what we're talking about today. Well, one of the Howlings we're talking about today. So I would like stay up late like on weekends, and I would always try to catch your show, and I really liked it. And actually, you're the one who introduced me to Mad Max. I saw Beyond Thunderdome on your show.
Oh yeah,
and that's what like got me into Mad Max. I ended up seeing the movie in reverse order. Talk about like the extremes. So it's like, oh wow, this is a fun movie for kids. And then you watch Road Warrior, you're like, oh shit. And then you watch Mad Max, like I think a baby just got ran over. But yes, one of the series I used to love watching in the 90s was the Howling series. Are you a fan of the Howling?
You're one of the few Howling fans who actually considers it a coherent franchise. I mean,
Joe Bob, it turns out the director of today's movie also was the only other person. But yes. I
mean, it's like every Howling film seems to come from another planet. Is there any continuity? Now, be honest. Is there any continuity between even starting with Howling 2.
Okay.
Let's start with Howling 2.
Here we go.
All right.
I'm a Howling expert. So you have Joe Dante's Howling.
Okay.
Brilliant film. Really love it. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. It's about a girl. She works with the cops to get like a killer arrested, and she has like PTSD, and she goes to like a little retreat in the mountains, and it turns out there's werewolves there. And at the end, she becomes a werewolf. Spoiler. And she reveals herself, and it's a great cliffhanger ending. Well, the second movie picks up right from that, and then the whole movie is about that girl's brother, who is Reb Brown, the original Captain America, and your Hunter from the future, teaming up with Christopher Lee to fight. I guarantee you this script was about vampires, and they rewrote it to be a Howling sequel, because Christopher Lee's like, oh, they live in a castle, and you got to kill them with titanium stakes or something like that. It is very, very bizarre. That is the only direct sequel to the first one.
Okay, and that's Sybil Danning.
Sybil Danning. Yes, where they cut to her taking off her top like 17 times in
the closing credits. She's here's my breast.
That's
here's
also,
my breast. Here's my breast.
I read a thing of trivia. I don't know if it's true, but it seems like it could be true. But apparently they got I wonder if there might have been like a Planet of the Apes movie filming at the time, but they said that they wanted werewolf costumes and they got Planet of the Apes kind of costumes, and that's why the werewolves in that movie they don't look like Planet of the Apes, but they just kind of have hair on them. They don't really look like werewolves. So that movie's a mess.
Well, you would be more of an expert than me, but did they film that one in Australia? Because it was Philippe Mora, right? The Australian director.
Yes, yeah. I forget if they filmed in Australia, but funny you bring that up. He then directed part 3, and that's the beginning. We were talking about like the Howling. It didn't succeed very much, but it succeeded where Halloween failed, where it actually did do the anthology series.
Yeah.
Where the only connective tissue is that there's a werewolf. But 3 is about the marsupials, and I have a video on this channel that is like unironically my favorite werewolf movie. It's just so weird and unique.
You are so weird. And unique. It's because this eventually leads to Howling 7.
Yes.
Where now they're in Pioneer Town, California,
yes.
an abandoned Wild West town, an abandoned B-movie town.
Yes.
In the middle of the high desert.
Yes.
I've been to Pioneer Town, California. Just literally the middle of nowhere. I mean, you go there and all you can see is dust and wind, and it's not the cool desert. It's not 29 Palms. It's just this wasteland place, and there's a bar there.
Yeah.
And so they said, and there's a motel. Apparently, there's a motel. There's like a 6-room motel.
Okay.
So there's a bar and a 6-room motel, and some genius named Clive Turner decided, you know what?
Yeah.
That's where the Howling 7 should be.
Now,
and so that's where they made it.
Now let's talk about Clive Turner. So he apparently worked on Howling 3. I think he was like a truck driver or something. Now,
okay.
I didn't have time to watch the credits of the films, but this is saying he wrote Howling 4 and Howling 5. He wrote like the story and screenplay, or co-wrote it. So 3, self-contained movie about marsupials in Australia, and a werewolf ballerina comes to mate with them, and it's a very complicated storyline. They go years in the future. Eventually the Pope gets involved, and he's absolved werewolves of their sins. It is a very loaded movie. But then Howling 4 is just Howling 1 again. It's closer to the book, but it's not as good. And I was telling you...
Oh, you've even read the book.
I haven't read the book.
Oh, okay.
I haven't read the book, but when I was looking up, because I'm like, why did they just make the first movie again? And apparently it was because they wanted it closer to the book, but it's not a good movie. But it stars, what's her name? I have her name here. Romy Walthall, who plays Marie Adams in that film.
Oh, the great Romy Walthall.
The great Romy Walthall, who comes back for 7. So then part 5 is a whodunit in a castle. And that's the one where Clive Turner is an actor in it. He's one of the people in the castle.
It looks like 5 was like shot over in Europe somewhere,
yes.
right?
There's a sign in a hotel in the beginning that says Budapest. I don't know if it was filmed in Budapest, but probably. But yeah, so that's a whodunit, and you find out the dumb girl, Mary Lou, was the werewolf the whole time.
Okay.
And then 6 is about a werewolf that comes into the town the same time as a traveling carnival freak show run by a vampire, played by Bruce Payne. And they fight.
Okay.
So completely unconnected films, right? And by the way, Clive Turner died in part 5. So Clive Turner gets Howling 7, New Moon Rising.
Let me point out.
Yeah.
New Moon Rising was just the title that they put on it so that people wouldn't know it was Howling 7.
Yeah,
it was released it was never really released.
Yeah.
It was because I went to New Line. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like when I was at TNT,
mm-hmm.
they would buy packages of films. You know, it's like they want these 4 titles, but the company that they're buying from says, in order to get these 4 titles, you got to buy these other 36.
Yeah.
And so they would get these huge packages of films, and the ones that they didn't really care about, they would say, "You want to show this on your show, Joe Bob?" And so they said, "You want to show Howling 7 on your show?" And so I didn't know what Howling 7 was, and so we played it. Yeah, and I have to say, one of the most mind-numbingly confusing accumulations of bad acting and incomprehensible plotting that I've ever seen in my life. And so we showed Howling 7, and I made, some disparaging comments about it and talked about who are these people that are in this movie. And the people who were in the movie wrote me letters saying, "We're in the movie. We're in the movie." There were people that lived there in Pioneer Town, California.
Apparently they just used the locals, and it shows.
And it was the barflies in Pioneer Town. It was the ones that hang out in that bar. And so we got so much attention for showing it one time. It was and sort of saying it was the worst movie ever made, that we showed it again and we got an even higher rating the next time. And so I went to New Line Cinema, which owned it. Yeah. And I said, you guys should release this. This is a possible cult movie. Yeah. And I'll do a commentary track or something. We can work together in this. And they're like, why? And I said, no, you don't understand. And they said, no, that's the way. We're not going to release it. We're not going to release it anywhere. And they had released a VHS. Yeah. And I said, what about the DVD? They said, well, we can't even do a DVD because it was shot on 35 millimeter film, and it was never even constructed into a real 35 millimeter film. He says, we have it. It's in pieces. It's in boxes out in our warehouse. It's like they just put enough of it together to get a VHS tape. Yeah. And then they said, we want nothing else to do with this movie for the rest of recorded time. And I said, you don't understand. The fact that it's so inept is going to be worth something to you. And they were like, why? And so I was just like, okay, I guess we won't be doing that project. Well,
whoever owns it now, if it's still New Line, you got to put it out. You got to put it out on Blu-ray.
Did it ever come out? I mean, it streams. I know it streams.
Yeah, it's on Tubi right now.
That's from the VHS.
Yes.
But did it ever? I don't think it ever came out on DVD or Blu-ray, right?
I've never seen it on DVD. So all the other ones have.
If you want to own it, you got to find one of those VHS tapes, and I bet you they're worth a lot of money now because
actually, I think a friend of mine owns one of the tapes.
It kind of became notorious, and but it's just painful. I recently went to Pioneer Town to see if they remember the movie, and they don't really recognize the movie in Pioneer Town. Pioneer Town was originally built it was a bunch of false fronts to do cheap westerns back in the 40s. And like there's like 5 streets in Pioneer Town, and one of them is Tom Mix Boulevard, and they have it was like abandoned in the middle 50s because nobody was making B westerns anymore. Yeah, and so the town was just abandoned, and bikers took it over.
That's pretty funny.
They just moved in. They moved into these temporary structures, and it became this lawless town where there was no police, there was nothing.
Sounds pretty awesome.
There was nothing but this bar, and all these western false fronts, and some of them had like sort of shacks behind the false front, and so just squatters just moved in, and it became a Wild West town.
That's actually really funny. It's like life imitating art.
50s. And so because it's beyond the reach of civilization, beyond the reach of the law, it's actually hard even in this day and age of GPS. It is hard to find. It is hard to get to Pioneer Town, California. And so what
you're saying is you probably shouldn't shoot a movie there these days.
And so Clive Turner decides to make Howling 7 there. Yeah. The first movie they'd had come there in 20 years by that time. And he decides, I'll star in the movie and I'll be a motorcycle riding paranormal investigator.
Which, by the way, and spoiler alert, he is his character from part 5, but he's playing it completely different. It's almost as if They're not connected. So here's the thing. This is, like you said.
Okay.
So he apparently wasn't involved in part 6 from what I saw. So maybe that's why it references that movie the least. So part 6, werewolf versus vampire at a carnival. You find out at the beginning of this movie, they're like, the carnival just left town and there's a dead body here. We need to investigate it.
Jesus Christ. Holy shit.
Mother of God.
And then that's when we get, there's like 2 movies going on where we get the scenes with the inspector and the priest.
The local inspector and the priest. First of all, Clive is Australian.
Yes.
So he doesn't know that in America, it would be the police detective.
Yeah.
Would not be the inspector. It's like, he has this Sherlock Holmes type guy who belongs, I guess in Australia, they call it the inspector.
Yeah.
So in this movie, it's the inspector, even though it's in Pioneer Town, California.
Yeah.
And so, the nearest Catholic priest to Pioneer Town would probably be in Mexico or something. There is no Catholic priest, much less a Catholic priest who wants to come to Pioneer Town. And
I don't think I think he was sent there because he investigates paranormal stuff.
Okay.
So
he was sent there by the Vatican, no doubt.
Yes.
To investigate.
They're very worried about werewolves.
Recent werewolf killings.
So he heard. Just bear with me here. Keep in mind, this movie right now is if you imagine making a Halloween sequel right now that makes all the films canon. It wouldn't make sense, right? It wouldn't make sense for part 3 and then 4, 5, and 6 and then 7 and 8. It would be bizarre. That's what they did. So the priest is like, well, let me tell you the story. There was this castle and all these people went there. And then this one guy died and the girl's name was Mary Lou and she escaped. Now, the actress who played Mary Lou.
And they're flashing back to footage
they're flashing back to a lot of footage.
4, 5, and 6.
So Mary Lou in Howling 6, she's just an extra. And I think they credit her as Mary Lou just as an inside joke because she was in the previous movie. But literally, by the way, the footage that he's playing on a tape, there was no camera in that scene when you watch part 6. I love when movies do that. So she's just there watching a freak show. And then the priest's like, there is Mary Lou. She's in the town. And everyone's like, well, no one, I think she gets credit in this movie just because they use her picture. But they're like, no one there looks like that. And she's like, well, the werewolf changed its face, which I guess they could just do. So
but he had that. But Clive Turner had that actress, right? Who was the extra in the previous movie, or no?
I don't think she's in.
It's not the same actress.
No, it's not the same actress. I think she's only credited. Yeah, archive footage. She's Elizabeth Shee. She's only credited as archive footage.
Oh, so she doesn't come back. So there's no reason to use her.
But those were 2 different things. That she wasn't Mary Lou. That was a joke. It's so bizarre. So yeah, and then Clive rolls into town. He's got an ulterior motive. He's spying on the townspeople. And he's just I love when writer-directors do this where they make themselves look like the biggest badasses ever. He comes in on this giant motorcycle, his long-ass hair blowing in the wind.
Oh yeah, it's the new Easy Rider. He's he's coming into town to solve the werewolf problem, and then he goes into the bar.
Yeah,
he goes into the bar, which is the only place to go when you're in Pioneer Town. He goes into the bar, and suddenly it becomes a musical. It becomes a country musical.
Yeah, so
with line dancing and with it's Pappy and Harriet's bar, and Pappy is this one-hit wonder from the 1930s.
He's the guy with the weird mustache, right?
He's Pappy has this hit song. The real Pappy in real life. He has this hit song from the ancient history of country music, and called "Stand Up."
They say, "Stand up." Have you ever been there? Come on now, stand up.
Yes, and he sings it in the movie.
And he sings it in the movie. And so there's all this footage of Pappy singing "Stand Up" and all these guys drinking at the bar and spectral line dancing and there becomes this whole subplot of happy people at the bar. And it's occasionally
Joe Bob, it's the movie. The werewolf. All right. So a large chunk of this movie is hanging out in this bar, and it's shot 3 ways. So the scenes where it's them joking and stuff, that's shot and lit kind of like a movie would be lit. But then they shoot the scenes of them singing, and it's really brightly lit because it was probably they just had one camera.
Well,
and they filmed during regular work hours.
Except they go outside of the bar for group sing. The entire town sings the song "Prescription Beer."
Yes, toward the end they go out and sing. But you're right. So this is the most bizarre part. They keep cutting to line dancing, and for some reason, everyone is line dancing in a room with no lights. It's like it's got a creepy spotlight on them.
I think Clive was trying to say that it was ghost line dancing or something. Or it's supposed to be creepy.
That is not how it reads.
He's trying to make it creepy.
But the way I read it is like
he just didn't have lights.
Did they just not have lights that day? Is it like did the light guy get fired? Did they run out of money? It's kind of like we joked about it in an episode a long time ago. The 80s movie, the live action Masters of the Universe. At the end of that movie, the sword fight is like in the dark because Golan and Globus from Canon, they just cut their funding. So they didn't have any money for a crew, so they just had to shoot the final sword fight in the dark. This is what it feels like. Like, I guess they just didn't have the light guy, but that was the square dancing scene. And like my grandparents did square dancing for a little bit, and I remember it being brightly lit. I don't remember it being in the dark.
But the whole time you're wondering what does this werewolf story have to do with country music in Southern California in the desert in this western town.
So we find out that there is a werewolf in the town, and it is Mary Lou, but since she changed her face, it's now a whodunit.
And
I'm still confused.
She's killing, and you never actually see the kills, right?
No. So all the werewolf footage in this, up until the exciting climax, all the werewolf footage in this is like this red POV like filter. Like I guess they wanted it to look like Predator, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but Predator had actual heat-seeking cameras that they then colored because real heat-seeking cameras are black and white. But this is just they put a red filter on at night, so you just can't see anything.
And then you go to the inspector and the priest in the motel room, going, it's apparently another vampire was or another werewolf.
Yeah, you're right.
Another werewolf victim is right here. Only you don't see anything.
Yeah,
right?
We never see anything. I like at one point he's recapping the previous films, and the inspector's like, "I'm sorry, I need to go to sleep. Can we pick this up later?"
Yeah, that's true. That's true. These strike me as community. Would you say they're community theater actors? You know, maybe.
Yes.
It's like there's no community theater within 100 miles of this place.
I was going to say
I don't know where they got him.
The priest is actually not too bad. I think he might have been a legit actor. For this movie, he's not too bad. But yes, the inspector, he's out acting the inspector. And we keep forgetting. So randomly, the inspector just has like an assistant come in, and it's this old woman. And the joke is that she has like dementia and forgets things.
Yeah.
That's the running gag. It never amounts to much.
And I hope when you go to Barstow, you'll look my son up.
We're in Barstow.
Oh, never do know where I am.
Sybil.
So Clive Turner.
So you're actually analyzing the plot of Howling 7.
Yes.
You're actually trying to follow the plot of Howling 7. So go ahead. Go ahead. I want to hear this.
Yes. So Clive Turner was sent there to investigate the town. And I think, if I'm reading this right, because he calls someone to report back to.
Oh, yeah. He's like CIA or something.
And I think the one person he's reporting to is the character. What did I say her name was?
Mary Lou?
No. The girl from part 4.
The one you talked about before.
Yes, the main character, the Marie Adams, I think, character from part 4.
Okay.
So he's calling her. So now she's there because she was in part 4, which has nothing to do with any of the other movies. So he's reporting to her, and I think at the end we find out the werewolf hypnotized her to send him to that village. I believe that's what happened.
Hypnotize her to send her to the village?
It's sorry, Joe Bob. I'm really sorry. I forgot this movie has retcon part 5 where Mary Lou was not just a werewolf. It was the spirit of the werewolf who lived in the castle and took Mary Lou over.
Okay.
Yes.
So the spirit of the werewolf went to California? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I guess the spirit of the werewolf that lived in the castle went into Mary Lou, left, stop by this little town to go to the carnival, and then stop by another town. And she kept the same face the entire time until she got to Pioneer Town, and then she switched her face.
Okay.
This ghost werewolf from, what did I say, Budapest, I think?
Yeah, now, so it's a ghost werewolf from Budapest who's killing people in Pioneer Town.
Yes.
But you don't, it's like, pardon me for not remembering. But how does the story eventually resolve?
Okay. Well, so like I said, Clive Turner revealed he is the guy from part 5. He survived.
Okay.
Even though the last time we saw him, he was face down in the snow during a crazy blizzard in Europe. But he got better.
He survived and got a motorcycle.
He got a motorcycle, and he started investigating stuff for the girl from part 4 for some reason. So yeah, he eventually gets pinned for all the killings. Because remember,
it's
he's trying
Clive
to win.
Turner?
Yes, he's
Okay.
trying to win the trust of the town, and how he does that is he sweeps up the floor with all the guys while wearing a big sombrero, and then they dance together. That's how he wins their trust. That's a scene in the
Okay.
movie.
That I do remember that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
like
then,
another musical scene. It's a musical.
Yes. And then there's that great scene. This is another part of his way to win the trust of the town. Is when it's the one guy drinking by himself, and then it cuts, and now there's 2 people, and then it cuts, and there's 3
it's
people.
choreographed shots.
Yes.
They do these choreographed
But I think
shots.
I think Clive Turner's like a little late on the one that he did. So I mean, he's under a lot of pressure. I understand. So yeah, he's doing these tapes the whole time, and people are investigating him because he gets into a fight with a guy at the bar because he's got this whole love thing with this girl. And I guess this guy was her ex-boyfriend. I'm sorry, I know I'm the resident
Okay.
howling expert, but even I find this one hard to follow.
Where is Clive?
Where is he now?
You know?
I don't know now.
Well, because we looked for him.
yes.
And Clive, if you're watching,
If you're watching, Clive.
we want you. I want you on the Last Drive-In. I want you on my show. You know, we will bring you from the Outback to my show. And so, because when we would look for Clive,
Yeah.
everyone said, "Oh, he went back to Australia."
Yeah.
Went back to Australia. Well, okay, we can talk to people in Australia. Where is he in Australia? You know, I think he's in Melbourne. I think he's a gaffer. They said, you know, he went back to lighting crew. Apparently, he had been working on lighting crew before, and
Yeah.
and we thought we had located him because he turned up on the credits of some movie that was in production in Australia
Okay.
as a gaffer.
Okay.
And when we actually sought him out through that, whoever was the production manager on that show, and it's like, oh, I haven't seen Clive in a while. You know, Clive is very elusive. You know, I think he's in an Aboriginal hut or something in the desert.
Well, I have a theory why it might be there, but to get back to
Okay.
this, so
All right, I'm sorry.
he gets
All right.
pinned for the murder of the jerk guy.
Okay.
Conveniently, all the people he gets into arguments with publicly, they all end up dying. But he investigates the murder because he's trying to see if it's the werewolf, but people think he's the one who murdered them. So he gets like arrested and everything. He's trying to break out of jail. But it
he's
turns
not a werewolf.
huh?
He's not a
He's
werewolf.
not a werewolf. It turns out I think it was his love interest, Cheryl. She is the werewolf.
Don't you recognize my voice? You've heard it before. In Budapest?
And what he should say is no, because you're played by a completely different actress.
The Count has murdered them.
No, this isn't real. Please say it's not real.
You're starting to worry me. I think you binge watched the whole series, Howling 1 through
honestly-
7, and you know,
You know what? Here's how it started. All right.
Okay.
So I watched this guy on TNT late at night in the 90s, and he got me into all these weird movies. And I stumbled on Howling 3.
I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and it's Werewolf Night here at Monster Vision. Our first flick is The Howling 3, The Marsupials, which puts werewolves in the kangaroo family.
And then I watched Howling 1, and that one's really good. And then I just kept watching all the other ones over and over again, and I don't know why.
Here's the disadvantage I'm always at. It's like people do that today. They're like, find a franchise, watch all of it all at the same time. I watched them when they came out in the theater.
Yeah.
As they came out. And so by the time the next one comes out, and I think they count on this too.
Yeah.
By the time the next one comes out, you don't remember completely the specific plot points
Which-
in the one before.
Which works for Howling because they were all disconnected
They were
until
totally
this
different.
movie where it expects you to remember a lot.
It's amazing how gullible we are. Just the title, just the word howling will make us go to the movie, because at one time in the very distant past, there was a decent movie called The Howling.
Yes.
And so now every time you put that name on a movie, we will go like trained rats, to watch the next one.
By the way, at some point, the ghost werewolf who possessed Mary Lou and now this other person, she must have went to the girl from Howling 4's house. So the girl from Howling 4, all her scenes are just in this one house. Like, she filmed all her scenes in like an afternoon, I guess. And at some point, she threw her off a balcony because it just cuts to just her, like the balcony, and she's just dead.
See, you're in your own world now. It's like
This is all in the movie.
I know, but you've made these connections that nobody else could possibly make unless they were like studying every extra and reading the connections.
I'm just telling you.
You've called up the IMDb on every movie that has the word howling in the description.
That's just, that's what Clive did. By the way, like, no one wanted these films to be connected. I don't understand why he wanted to connect three completely different films.
Especially the people. I mean, I get the impression that the people that owned the Howling, they just had a rate card.
Yeah.
You want to make a Howling movie? Okay, here's the price.
But
it's like
all the
here you
reviews
go.
for all the reviews for Howling 4 are negative. No one likes that movie. So there wasn't anyone who watched Howling 4 and was like, "Oh, I hope that girl comes back. I need to know how her story ends."
Were there any positive mainstream reviews for any Howling movie except the first one?
No. Not that I can tell.
I don't think
I
so.
still think the third one's like a really clever, like, horror comedy. That one's really, really good.
I don't know. It's like they didn't understand the rule of a part 5, which is you bring in Mickey Rooney. That's what you always do. You bring in Mickey Rooney for the part 5.
What was the one he did? My friends covered it.
Man, I think he
Silent Night, Deadly
I think they
Night?
did Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think he
Yeah.
did one of the Puppet Masters. I think. It's like there was always, like, if you go far enough in a franchise, Mickey Rooney's in the movie.
You know what's funny? I reviewed Conan the Barbarian, the first one, with a friend of mine, and on Tubi they have the '90s show Conan the Barbarian, the live action one from the late '90s, which like Brian Yunza produced. And the first 2 episodes have Andrew Divoff from like the Wishmaster movies. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. What's his face? Rudy is in the first episode of Conan the Barbarian. I'm like, holy shit, there he is. They got him for the pilot episode.
Yeah,
they kill him right away.
Yeah, there were actually people in Hollywood in the 80s who were saying, "Can we get Mickey?"
But wasn't it like famously he hated Silent Night, Deadly Night? Like, he was on record.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When the first Silent Night, Deadly Night came out, Mickey Rooney made these public statements. This is not the Hollywood I know. This is not, this is something that should never be seen. But they took Santa Claus and they did this horrible thing, and then he's in part 5.
You gotta pay the bills. You gotta pay the bills, Joe Bob. I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, Howling 4 Girl is dead.
We are actively trying to get Howling 7 for my show.
Yes.
Because there's so much to talk about, and as you know now.
Yes, I know. But I know you know the behind.
But I refuse to call it the Howling New Moon Rising, because that was the attempt to cover up the abortion that it is.
It is funny, like they were numbered till part 6. I mean, the most bizarre one is part 4, because it's just a remake of part 1. So why would you call it part 4? It's weird. They all have subtitles too. Do you remember all the subtitles?
Oh, for the ones made in Europe, you mean?
Yeah, no, like they all have like Howling, and then they all have a subtitle. I could tell.
Oh, you mean yeah.
Famously, the second one is mostly called Your Sister is a Werewolf, but it's also called Sturba Werewolf Bitch, which I think is the funniest.
What? I never heard that.
Yes, it was. There's an alternate title called Sturba Werewolf Bitch. I think it was like one of the European releases.
Okay.
3 is the Marsupials.
Right. 4 is what?
4 is the original Nightmare, because again, it's a remake.
Okay.
5 is oh my god, I'm blanking on 5. Wait, I knew it. Oh my god. Now I'm embarrassing myself. I forgot the name of 5. Wait. It's got to be in here. The Rebirth.
The Rebirth. Okay.
5 is the Rebirth. 6, I think, is the Freaks.
The Freaks, because of the Carnival.
Because of the Freak show. And then 7.
And then 7 is New Moon Rising.
And then I'll get to the one after that. But yeah, so the whole finale.
Oh yeah, there's a Howling 8, right?
Yes,
but
I have it right here.
They don't call it Howling 8.
They don't call it Howling 8. So the whole finale, he's finally got her cornered. And she's like, you're going to take the fall for all my werewolf activity, and I'm going to kill you and say it was self-defense. But little does she know, the town has been working with him to pull her out. Somehow, because he loses the town's trust, because they grab one of his tapes and they play it, and he's like, this town, they're all idiots, but I like them, but they're all idiots. So
they drink a lot of beer.
Yeah.
I like
At which point they should be
dance.
like, hey, you know what? He's got our number. if someone like, hey, Tony, here's a tape of your friend calling you an asshole. I'm like, yeah, that checks out. Was that a gotcha? That checks out. Yeah. So he's won the town's trust over, and they all confront her. So she decides to turn into a werewolf, and it's one of the worst. Like 90s morph effects were pretty bad. This is 90s direct-to-video morph effect. It is awful, and the werewolf looks like a Halloween costume. They don't linger on it a lot because they know how bad it looks. I don't know if you remember the shot. We'll play it right here. So for some reason, she decides to turn into the werewolf because she could do it on command.
Okay.
But like,
and when she does that, what does he do? Kill her?
Yeah, the whole townspeople shoot her.
Oh, okay.
They shoot her to death, but like realistically,
because now they like Clive.
Yes, but according to the law, like you would have to prove she's a werewolf, and she could just stay human and probably get absolved of all of this.
Oh yeah, the inspector wouldn't like that.
Instead, they all murder her, and then it awkwardly cuts to Pappy singing a song. But then Clive Turner joins in, and he rechanges the lyrics to reflect what happened in the movie. So he makes them about...
So it ends with a big song.
Yes. And I think it might be...
Then does he get back on his motorcycle and ride out of town, or...
No, it just
ends with the song.
It literally, so he gets up, he's singing the song, he's ad-libbing lines about werewolves, and then like it starts to fade to black, but you can see that he's like, I think you can see he's still kind of singing, but you can't hear him. It just awkwardly fades to black. And what a film. What a film.
It's like, I want to show Howling 7 so bad. And you know,
well, I'm glad you did the show, because now I've updated you on the lore, so you'll do less research. Like, don't worry, I have the lore of Howling 4, 5, and 6 backed up.
Oh, I'm going to get all your notes before I do. When I went to Pioneer Town, there were some fans there who watched the last drive-in, and so they saw me there, and they came over, and they were like, hey, you know, wow, seeing you here. And then we're like, Howling 7? Yeah, Howling 7. Yeah, it's like, anybody who's like in our world who goes there, it's because of Howling 7.
Yeah. It's a bizarre, it's the strangest sequel I've ever seen because of the continuity stuff, but like,
because it's not a sequel?
Because it's not a sequel that was turned into a sequel. By the way, we forgot to mention, we were talking about it in the car, but like, all the scenes with the inspector and priest are usually in different rooms of a house, but there was the one day, I guess it was nice outside, and they got a little risky, and they filmed a scene of them walking and talking. And I'm like, oh, wow, they got one walking scene out of them. But it's odd, because I don't know if you remember anything from Howling 6. I know a lot of our audience is probably fresh in their memory, but that movie actually looks pretty good. Like, the effects are actually really decent for that film. Like, the werewolf looks cool. The vampire looks like a panther. He's, like, purple with, like, white fangs. And the freak show people are really cool. And it's actually like a decently made film. I think in some versions you could see a boom mic in one shot, but you know, that who am I to judge? But to see this film and see like how much of a step down it is in quality, it's like, man, how are these even connected? Why did they even make this movie? What was the point of making this?
You know way too much about Howling 7. It's scary how much you know about Howling 7, and look, you know that's going to be on your psychiatric report someday.
Look! They played them a lot in the '90s, and now they're available on every. And that's the thing I want to tell you guys. Howling 1 is usually hard to find streaming free. Howling 8 probably isn't streaming free, but like Howling's part 2 to 7 are usually on any free platform you can think of. You will always find a Howling movie streaming. So like, I don't know. It's
By the way, that the end of Howling 2 where Sybil Danning rips off her top like 17 times or whatever.
Yeah.
She did not like that. She complained.
Yeah.
She complained mightily about doing that, but apparently that had no effect on the producers. They said, "No, we're doing that." And I don't know why they would do it at the end credits. You know, if you're trying to get people to stay in their seats for the movie, it's like, why would you do it at the end?
And she is naked in the movie. I guess they felt they didn't get their money's worth of Sybil Danning, so they just threw more in at the end.
I'm going to ask her about that. She's going to be at the Joe Bob's Drive-In Jamboree, by the way, is July 8th through 10 in Memphis. And
awesome.
Sybil Danning is going to be there.
And
I'm definitely going to question her about Howling 2.
I highly recommend everyone go to that. I went to your Jamboree last year, and it was just so much fun. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on Howling 7. It's a very confusing sequel. So you haven't seen Howling Reborn. Now, this was, I want to say 2000.
Wishful thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. 2011, released by Anchor Bay. I don't think you're going to play this one on your show.
Why?
Cause all right. So
we'll play any horror film on that show.
All right. Maybe you should play this one.
You're saying we're picky?
Yeah. Maybe you should play this one. So it says it's a reboot of the first movie, but based on memory, I can only remember one part that even resembles the first film. Now, if you were ever watching the original Howling film and you said, okay, that's good, but what if it was more like Twilight? Ooh. Howling Reborn.
Ooh.
And by the way, there's multiple werewolves in this and they're all inconsistent. Like, I don't even know if that werewolf even shows up in the movie, but sometimes they look like orcs from Lord of the Rings, and then sometimes they might look like a wolf, and then sometimes I think they just have big fangs. It is all over the place. You want me to read you the description of this film?
No.
I'm going to do it anyway. Because maybe I'm not selling you, but maybe the DVD will sell you. Okay. In this chilling reboot of the 80s horror classic, Landon Liboran of Terra Nova, that was a show that got canceled in one season.
Okay.
Stars as high school senior Will Kidman, whose infatuation with the beautiful classmate Lindsay Shaw of Pretty Little Liars. Do you watch Pretty Little Liars?
I don't say that I can't say that I did.
And 10 Things I Hate About You. No, not the movie. It's the TV show, but they're not specifying. Another thing I canceled one season begins to trigger certain teenage animal instincts, but when a mysterious woman, some girl's name I can't pronounce, from Casino Royale, with a shocking secret re-enters his life, Will learns that he is heir to a powerful line of werewolves. Now he finds he has a choice to make, succumbing to his primal nature or turning against his own. This is almost like Teen Wolf, like a scary Teen Wolf. In order to fight the destiny of his legacy and save the girl of his dreams, he must battle not only his growing bloodlust, but an army of fearsome beasts hell-bent on killing us all. Tonight the full moon rises, the horror begins anew, the howling is reborn.
Okay.
Did that sell you on the movie?
There was a little bit of ginger snaps in that description,
wasn't there? Yeah,
right?
A little
the
bit
high
of ginger
school
snaps,
thing,
a little bit of Teen Wolf, and a little bit of Twilight. Yeah, I wouldn't watch this movie. Don't watch this movie.
So you never watched it either?
No, I did.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I definitely watched it, but this is the believe it or not, Joe Bob, there is a Howling movie I only watched once, and it was this one.
It's the latest one. What year was that?
2011.
Okay.
Who knows when it was filmed? It might have been one of those, because it was direct to video. It might have been one of those that sat on the shelf. But yeah, it's definitely a 2011 film.
Well, let's do the Howling 9. You know,
we should do the Howling 9. Now, that brings me back. You're wondering where Clive Turner is.
Yeah.
And he's back in Australia. I think, in my heart of hearts, I think he's been, since 1995, when this movie came out, Part 7, I think he's been working on the definitive sequel to Howling 3. That's his next step. He's going to make a sequel.
Why Howling 3?
Because it was in Australia.
Okay.
And that's the one where the were-marsupials have a were-god, and the one turns into the were-god, and a guy blows it up with a bazooka. The Howling 3 is awesome. When's the last time you watched Howling 3?
Decades. We're talking decades. I mean, I never became attached to the Howling franchise the way you have. And in fact, as I pointed out at the beginning, I've never met anyone who's that attached to the Howling franchise. So
You'll never believe it, but neither have I.
so
I honestly, I cannot explain why I watch these movies so much. They're not good. They have some decent effects here and there, but they're few and far between. And for some reason,
I mean, what are the greatest werewolf movies ever made? American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
Ginger Snaps. Would
Yeah.
you put Ginger Snaps on the list?
Ginger Snaps is actually one that I've seen recently, and I really liked it. We actually covered it on this show.
Yeah. I think the Wolfman.
Yeah.
The original Wolfman.
I mean, I put Dog Soldiers. That's a good one. You ever
Yeah.
see Dog Soldiers?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But I say no Howling film is on that list.
Wait, even the first one, the Joe Dante one?
Yeah, okay.
That one's
Yeah.
really good. The werewolves look pretty awesome in that one.
Okay.
Except for that one scene where the guy's having sex with the girl and she turns into a werewolf, but it's like hand-drawn animation. Do you remember when movies used to do that? It's like they couldn't afford stop motion, but CGI wasn't a thing, so they tried to pass off 2D animation in live-action films, and it
Like
never
matte
worked.
paintings and stuff like that? Or?
I'm not even talking about matte paintings, like characters just straight up turn into cartoons.
Okay.
Yeah, there's I think it was Beastmaster. There's a scene where like a bird picks someone up and it's just a cartoon, but we're made to believe it's a real person and it just never worked.
Okay.
Howling has one of those scenes,
Okay.
but the rest of Howling 1 is great. But yeah, 2, not so good. 3 is the best werewolf movie ever made. You'll never change my mind. But yeah, after that, it's all downhill after that. And I think 7 might be the worst.
Oh,
Is this
not just the worst werewolf movie. No, that's shortchanging it, you know.
When the best looking thing in your movie is archive footage of the other movies, you have a problem. And like I said, here's some advice. If you're gonna make a movie mostly about square dancing, you should probably light the square dancing scene.
I wouldn't even say it's mostly about square dancing. It's mostly about drinking.
Yes. Well, the drinking scenes were lit properly. It's just the square dancing wasn't. Now, but yeah, I think.
But it's almost like, you know, somehow Clive Turner became infatuated with this little B-movie town.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere, and he thought, what can I do here where we just drink a lot and sing and dance? And a werewolf movie.
And he's like, oh wait,
I'll get the license.
I worked on a couple werewolf movies.
I'll get the license for Howling 7. We'll just make Howling 7 here.
I'll never. You need to find Clive. I need someone to ask him, why was it so important to connect 3 unrelated films? Like, why did you need to connect all of those?
Well, there are a lot of questions we need to ask.
There's a lot of questions we gotta ask Clive Turner.
That's only one of them.
What was the deal with the sombreros? You keep mentioning. There's a singer he keeps mentioning, and they make jokes about, and no one ever knows who he's talking about. That one's weird. There's a lot going on there. But yes, Joe Bob, thank you. Oh,
all right.
What did you want to say?
No. I do not want to say anything else about a Howling 7. This is all the Howling 7 I can take for today. I need 3 whiskeys right now just to get Howling 7 out of my system.
I hope to God you get Howling 7 on your show and you get Clive Turner, because I will definitely, I will tune into all episodes, but
I will.
But you better get everything.
We'll give him
right.
a first class seat on Qantas Airlines. and
Now, I want you to know, I will be watching that episode. If you get anything wrong about the Howling lore, I will send you a strongly written letter.
I'm sure that, not only that, I mean, the residents of Pioneer Town will be all over me. You know, and the ones who have not died of cirrhosis of the liver will be all over that show. So,
but yes, if there's one takeaway from this, we were talking about how people always complain about the Halloween movies. Halloween 3 was supposed to start the anthology and it never took off. Well, here's an example of it taking off. They did an anthology series, and then 7 ruined it by connecting them. But this is a franchise.
What do you call that when it's connected by theme but not by story?
They call it I've heard the
it.
term spiritual sequel. Like, this is a spiritual sequel to that film.
But there's something they call it.
Yeah.
Like the George Romero's Night of the Living Dead movies are that. That's what they are.
Yes, they're
It's
not
like,
really.
'cause
And then
there's six of them.
yeah,
They're not really story connected, but they are theme connected.
yeah. Another example is John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, where it's The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. 3 unrelated films, but they're about the end of the world, so they consider that the Apocalypse trilogy. And I think the most recent one is the Cornetto trilogy by Edgar Wright, the Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz.
Dario Argento has a couple of trilogies. He calls them trilogies, but I don't think they were intended to be trilogies.
I don't think they were intended.
I think that's what you do when you have no other way to sell your movie. This is only the second one in the trilogy. There's going to be another one later.
And whoever owns The Howling now, I don't know. I know Anchor Bay distributed this.
Whoever has the rate card, I want to see the numbers on the, how much would it cost us to make Howling 9?
Well, I should call Moonstone Entertainment and Panama Pictures. I'm gonna call them up and see if they still own Howling, because I really want to do a Howling.
2011.
Yeah,
they haven't really exploited the franchise.
They really haven't.
They haven't really hired David Gordon Green to do the next Howling trilogy. So I don't.
Well, look. If Clive Turner's not working on it, call me up. I want to do Howling 3 Part 2. We got to go back to that weird Australian.
And would you hire Clive?
100% I'd hire Clive. And you know what? I will task him and be like, hey, connect Howling 3 to all the other films.
But Clive, we want more motorcycles,
more
line
motorcycles,
dancing, and more beer drinking, and and more, and it has to be in Australia to have like real inspectors.
Yes. So I guess the final question is this the strangest sequel you've ever seen?
The strangest?
Yeah.
The strangest.
For what the movie's about, for what it tried to accomplish? Yes.
It is.
Because if it had just been Werewolf in a town full of drunks, it'd be like, all right, this is another unconnected story.
See,
but it's the whole...
You're making me want to go back to Pioneer Town and identify the location of every scene in the movie and do a tribute to it and bring a priest to bless it.
So yes, that is the strangest sequel in quite possibly the strangest werewolf franchise of all time. There's some weird ones out there, but yeah, this is very, very strange. Highly recommend you watch Howling 3 or watch my video on it. Joe Bob, what have you got going on? Where can we find you? Obviously on Shudder, but...
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm doing a lot of live shows. I was just here in town to be at the Colonial. Well, I say in town. I still don't know where I am. We're like hours away from the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville. But I just did my show last night, and then
have you ever done a Blobfest?
I've never been to Blobfest. I want to do Blobfest.
Blobfest is fun.
3 of the Blob Queens came to my signing table last night, and because they name a Blob Queen every year, and 3 of them were in the same party.
That is, you should do it at least once. It's fun because the whole block, they put blobs in their window and stuff. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, continue what you were saying.
All right, so no, next week I don't know when this airs, but next week I'm gonna be in Knoxville at FrankenCon.
Oh,
which is a new deal. That's a brand new festival.
Yeah, this will probably be afterwards, but
afterwards, okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to Phoenix for a couple of shows with my How Redneck Saved Hollywood. But the big show this summer is the Joe Bob's Drive-In Jamboree, which is 3 days at the Summer Drive-In in Memphis. And there's also a fan con associated with it. And the first night is, talk about franchises.
Yeah.
The first night, I allowed Darcy, the mail girl, to program the first night.
I'm sure this went really well.
She has been on my case for years now to show Halloween 3. And I've always said never. And so not only did she program Halloween 3 on the first night of the festival, but she got Tom Atkins, the 2 stars, Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin, and the director, Tommy Lee Wallace, to come to the drive-in that night in order for all of them to say, defend yourself. And so I can't really suddenly say, I was only kidding, guys. I've got like Tom Atkins on my ass now. Actually,
Yeah.
We were at some convention somewhere, and Tom Atkins was there, and Darcy, who's like the biggest Tom Atkins fan in the world, took a poster over to get him to sign it. And he said, "Why should I sign this? As soon as you go back over there, Joe Bob's just going to rip it up." and so he knows about the controversy. So we're going to decide once and for all: does Halloween 3 belong in the franchise?
Okay.
And is it a good movie or is it a bad movie? It's like, I think a lot of people say, well, the only reason you think it's a bad movie is that it has the Halloween name on it. If it was just called Season of the Witch and you treated it on its own merits, you would see what a great movie it is. And it's like, no, I wouldn't.
I'm on your side. So I have on our Patreon, we have a commentary track for Halloween 3. And I'm like in the middle where I'm like, yes, it's not as bad as people say it is, but there's now this movement that is people are acting like it's way too good. Like my one co-host Crystal loves it. It's her favorite Halloween movie. I'm like, guys, it's still a movie about rocks from Stonehenge turning people's face into bugs and robots. Like it's never going to be a great film. It's not as bad. It's not as bad. Doesn't deserve all the hate, but it also doesn't deserve all this praise.
Well, Darcy started that whole thing. And then, anyway, on Saturday night of the festival, we're doing like a recreation of my regular show, The Last Drive-In, like double feature. And so we don't announce the titles.
Obviously, yes.
And then on Sunday, we have the World Drive-In Movie Festival, which is we recognize the indie filmmakers who don't get any money from LA, don't get any money from New York, don't get any money from London, just like sort of do-it-yourself filmmakers. And this will be the second year that we've had this festival. Last year, the winners of this festival were incredible. They were just amazing. And so it's our attempt to elevate bring some attention to these filmmakers who can't break through the Netflix, Amazon.
Yeah, I hear you.
The 5 companies that now control what everybody watches.
I've been quiet about it, but I guess I'll announce it here without announcing too much. But I'm about to gear up to make a horror film, currently in pre-production of it. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm probably going to run into.
People come up to me at events and they say, "Joe Bob, why aren't there any great horror films anymore?" And I say, there are many great horror films.
No, there's so many good horror films now.
I said, there's more horror films than there have ever been. I said, you don't see them because you're working from a menu that's prepared for you on streaming services. And these lesser known filmmakers don't have the marketing budget to compete with these guys or to force them to promote their movies. And so there's so many filmmakers who have a really good movie and have just given it away to Amazon Prime or whatever. Yeah,
I was going to say Amazon Prime is where you find a lot of indie films too. And obviously Shudder has a really good selection of classics and indie stuff.
Well, I mean, at least Shudder promotes the films when they
Shudder does, yes. But I love how they have that option where you can watch it live and everything. So
anyway, so that's what we're having on July 8th through 10. We call it the Drive-In Woodstock. And the reason it's the Drive-In Woodstock partly is because the one you were at last year at the Mahoning Drive-In, it was muddy.
That's very muddy.
We're going to the south this time, where there's not so much rain in the month of July.
Actually,
so that people can enjoy the movies and the fan convention and
if you go back and check out our Fear Street trilogy episode, I have a clip from that that day where like a tent behind us went flying into the wind because of how windy and rainy it was.
Oh yeah, it was horrible.
But yes, thank you so much for coming on the show, Joe Bob. Loved having you here.
Now you got to give me a guide or something to get me out of here. Just give me a compass or something so I can make my way back to Philly.
I guided you pretty well through the Howling franchise. I'm pretty sure I can guide you back to Philly.
All right, just assure me that at some point I'm going to be at the Philly train station.
Yes, I'm going to take you down.
Okay.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Call our voicemail line. Sign up on Patreon and check us out wherever you get your podcast. Goodbye.
Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our other videos and Patreon page.
Talking about tapes.